Tony, for the invitation, and I must say that I've learned a great deal from the presentations given this morning. So I hope that my presentation can add a little to this with a focus on transport. So let me just see now. Okay, let me just start, I give a bit of context for railway in Ireland, and I think this is true to some extent well, that, to a large extent, many of our railway stations are not in the heart of our cities, or in the periphery, because that's how private railway companies 150 years ago. And we have tended to focus a lot on intercity services, that national railway companies have done that. So there's something, it's not, okay. And, and also for institutional reasons, we probably haven't integrated our rail planning as well with urban development, urban planning, as well as what we might. And that has been the case in the past. Many of our stations, we have car parking at stations, and we have, functional bus interchange at many of our stations, but we haven't done a good job in considering the first mile and the last mile for our public transport trips, and that just has been how things have developed. Now, I think there's a general recognition among urban planners and architects and others that that high capacity and mass transit is essential for sustainable development. However, we've tended to proceed on transport on the one hand, and cities have proceeded with urban planning on the other, and we have not integrated them as well as we might, in my view. My own view is that within the infrastructure we have in rail in Ireland, that there's a potential to do a tremendous amount more, particularly for the regional cities. And that's what I want to speak about here this morning. So if that's been the historical approach, let's say, here's some approaches that I think we're moving towards. I think there's a potential for our railway stations to become destinations, a magnet for economic and social activities in our cities, and that our cities become multipolar, so everything isn't concentrated in one area, and our railway stations can be magnets for activity in other parts of cities. I think that our railways and our stations, we can operate safely, and we can protect our revenues by having less defined boundaries between railway and other activities. We can have fuzzy boundaries and still keep our passengers and our staff safe. Rather than keeping our infrastructure totally segregated from the rest of the world, we can and are now talking to people about building above us, below us, around us, so that we're much better integrated into the urban environment. And we're now, I believe, focusing far more on the end-to-end journey, not just from station to station, but from the origin of the journey to the ultimate destination. And we're looking beyond the railway stations to do that. And I think that within cities that we have to offer a credible alternative to private car, not just within the city, but in the functional urban areas, because our cities have outgrown their traditional boundaries, and we can provide commuter services within those areas, and that's what we need to do. Just in terms of the broader context for Irish Rail, I'm going to focus in a moment on the regional cities, but before that, people would be aware in Dublin that we have ambitious plans to expand our DART into the commuter belt, proceeding first with Maynooth, so we have major plans there. We're focusing within the Greater Dublin area on transport-oriented development and how we can promote more sustainable urban planning in those areas. And in the wider network, we're in the market for much more sustainable rolling stock, hybrid trains, battery trains. We're shortening our journey times, and we're now focusing a lot as well on offering a competitive freight offering, because it's our job to relieve congestion however we go about it. So taking trucks off the road is part of our job as well. So that's what we're doing in the wider context. But I want to focus more today on the regional cities. Now, the National Planning Framework document, which Martin mentioned earlier and the Minister mentioned, I think it's an outstanding document in that it recognises, frankly, for the very first time, that it's not sustainable for Dublin and it's not sustainable for the country to have everything poured in to the greater Dublin area. And, it's very forthright in acknowledging that. And it recognises that there needs to be centres of growth outside the greater Dublin area, and in particular in Galway, Limerick, Cork and Waterford, which are the cities that we're focusing on a bit more this morning. And that national planning framework envisaged a 50 to 60% growth target for jobs and for and population in those cities, much more so than the growth target. There will continue to be growth in Dublin, but the growth has got to take place far more in those regional cities. That's the ambition, and I think is a very solid one, and one that as a national railway we have to support. We can influence that if that increase in employment and population takes place in those cities. The transport network to and within those urban areas can play a critical role in making sure that that growth actually takes place, and it takes place in a sustainable way. Now, what we're doing, what I'm saying this morning, and what we say in general, is that it's our job as transport providers to tell planners, urban areas, what can be done. What we will actually do would have to respond to the priorities of those, national, regional, and city authorities. So we watch carefully and contribute to and influence what goes into the various metropolitan area strategies and plans. We identify how much it's going to. We ask how rail can play the part, and we go off and try and find the money to do that from whatever source is possible, and it's our job then to deliver it once there's a consensus among the various planning and other authorities that this is what should be done. But we're responsive to those strategies. Now, moving on to the cities. I'll start with Cork, not just because I'm from there, but in Cork we already have commuter rail services which function well for the people that it serves. We have commuter rail services to Cove and to Middleton, and then we provide services, the first stop on the Dublin line is to Mallow. It's a solid service, but it by no means meets the ambition of that sustainable population and employment growth that's envisaged for the metropolitan area in Cork. So we have developed and have put to government and are discussing with the local authorities in Cork City and County Council what we can do. Our proposals include obviously buying more rolling stock. Our railway station in Kent Station in Cork at the moment, it's a cul-de-sac. There is a very achievable project to have through-line trains through Kent Station. We want to double track the line to Middleton. A lot of the population growth that's going to take place in the Cork area is east of the city towards Middleton. We need to double track that and provide services. And we need to build new stations near where that population growth is going to take place. And we believe that over the longer term, we should electrify those lines. So we have put forward proposals to government for funding and discussed them with the local authorities that will achieve the network that you see on the map there, where we would have a lot more stations, 8 additional stations, and we would be providing 10-minute frequency to places like Middleton and to Mallow and stops along the way, and in that busy section, 5-minute frequency. That would be a commuter service that would offer a credible alternative to private car, and when people hear about traffic congestion, Dunkettle interchange and so forth, we believe that we can provide a credible alternative to people being stuck in traffic there. We can do all of this within our existing footprint, which is a tremendous benefit in terms of, sweating the assets, not having major planning issues. We have to go through planning processes, of course, but it's not like we're going out demolishing new houses or anything such as that. We can do that with our existing footprint, and we can increase our existing capacity by, a huge amount, 450% within our existing footprint. And that growth, which is envisaged in the National Planning Framework, can take place in a less car-dependent way. And that's what we want to do. My own view is that we need to do it before the houses are built, because if we wait until the development takes place, that development takes place in a car-dependent way. By we committing to it firmly now and saying that development is going to take place around public transport, that would make a huge difference. And Martin mentioned earlier about very exciting plans in the Docklands area of Cork, which we're excited about as well. You can see that our railway station, Kent Station, is in the bottom left-hand side, and the development as planned is, effectively within walking distance of our station, and there are certain bridges planned to cross the Lee, those places. And so we want to be part of that very exciting brownfield development Martin spoken about earlier, and make our contribution to that. Tivoli Docks, very exciting developments, and we can bring rail there. That Docklands redevelopment brownfield site is a game changer for Cork metropolitan area, and there are huge opportunities for uplift, for transit-oriented development, and with the various other modes that are planned, bus and light rail for Cork, we think that rail can make an enormous difference there. We've started this to some extent by reorienting our railway station. Kent Station now faces out onto the Lee, and it has excellent bus interchange, has cycle interchange and so forth. And this is the first step in making sure that the development in the Docklands area of Cork is going to be done in a sustainable way. Moving on to Limerick, at the moment, the public transport share of development in Limerick is marginal in all modes. We provide very little in terms of a credible alternative to the private car. Now, a few people earlier have mentioned the arrival of the Land Development Agency, a new statutory body, which I think is a very important contribution to the institutional framework in Ireland. And we, Iarnród Éireann and CIE, which the National Transport Agency that actually owns the land, we're working closely with the council in Limerick and with the Land Development Agency, and that whole area within that red boundary around Colbert Station. Colbert Station is there. That's an area that we believe should be the catalyst for huge residential, commercial, or urban growth. And this work is ongoing. Just overlaying on that, the railway line, that blue line is an existing line. The red line and onto the purple line, that's a disused line. So, reopening disused line is so much easier than going out and finding a new route. And we're keen that we reopen that line and provide freight services back to Foynes, which is an important port, and passenger service to some stops along that line. The only part that's not really there is that there is a section which is within our footprint, that yellow section, where we think an additional rail line there. If we provide that in the Colbert Station quarter area, in the Limerick area, there is an opportunity for Limerick Shannon metropolitan area to be developed in a totally sustainable manner, and that this area, which is within hundreds of meters of O'Connell Street in Limerick, can become the heart of a sustainable redevelopment of Limerick. And we're working very closely with the relevant authorities to make sure that the railway station is at the heart of it. There's a Limerick Shannon metropolitan area transport strategy being consulted at the moment. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for to deliver this. For people, I know there's someone else speaking from Limerick tomorrow. I have there various either existing or disused railway lines to a large extent, or a single railway line where we can make into a double track, where that has the potential to provide a transport network for the Limerick Shannon area, which be integrated buses and linking to places where there has been significant employment and demographic growth in recent years, but it's been happening in a car dependent way. There is an opportunity now to make sure it's not as car dependent. Moving on to Galway, the congestion relief, I think Galway is probably our most congested city, and 100 years ago, you could travel, there was a double track between Galway city centre and Athenry, and we're talking to the Galway city and county councils about double tracking it again, reopening, expanding Iarnro railway station, providing park and ride there. And one of the speakers earlier spoke about the opportunity both in Iarnro and the city centre. And this is such an obvious solution to an important part of the congestion relief in Galway. And the railway station at the moment in Galway City, just in Eyre Square, it's a functional railway station. It works, but it's not a place that's a destination. And by doing this, we can develop commuter links and a destination in the heart of the city. The URDF funding is an essential catalyst to the work that's taking place with the Galway councils and ourselves. Briefly on Waterford, similarly, URDF has funded some major work that's planned in Waterford, and Waterford City Council and County Council have approved a strategic development zone in the north, in the city here, and it's about 1 kilometre from the railway station, and we're talking to Waterford to say we will move our railway station 1 kilometre east of this point and have at the heart of that commercial development. So this is a very exciting development in partnership with the local authority and commercial development, and it will put public transport in the heart of new development there. So is this all going to happen? Or what could stand between us and delivery of this? Here's a few thoughts myself, from the work I do in Ireland and internationally. The first thing, a challenge I find is that in the work that public transport people do, we often find that people say, well, we're going to get to the public transport once the road program is built. And I find that in Ireland and I find it internationally. Look, it's our highest priority once the roads are built. The roads are never built. There's always another road to be built. So a challenge to delivering the public transport is to reorient those priorities. A second issue, I think, is that even though we can do all this within our footprint, and I think it's affordable in many ways, the dependence on the exclusive dependence on the exchequer is probably not sustainable. And I think for that and for other reasons, we in public transport should be engaging more with commercial development and integrating it. It's both for the money and to make sure that our systems meet their requirements and their developments fit into public transport. And I'd be very much in favor of that. And the other thing I would issue that I have concerned about is that everything we're speaking about today is about urban growth, renewals, city centres and so forth. When it comes then to evaluating our investments, people then look at benefit to cost ratios, congestion relief. And if we make our evaluation on our major investments based exclusively on congestion relief, we're going to we'll be building more roads. And I think how we evaluate our major investments has got to take account of the various things that the Minister spoke about, Martin and other people spoke about here today, and it does not at the moment. So to conclude, I'm absolutely convinced that the vision of balanced region development and our absolute requirement for climate change mitigation, that we absolutely need a major shift, modal shift to public transport in regional cities. There are very deliverable alternatives to car dependency that I've described here today, that almost all of them can be done within the footprint of an existing infrastructure and at reasonable cost. It costs money to go from a single track to a double track, but it's a manageable cost. And I think if we make these changes, we can enhance the quality of life and influence the urban form in Cork, Limerick, Galway and Waterford to a tremendous extent. There is the government, and both here in Dublin and with Northern Ireland, we're looking at beginning a national strategic rail review for both the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. This is an opportunity for us to look at public transport beyond the congestion relief and to look at its role in the regional cities. And that would apply Belfast and Derry as well, I believe. Once we emerge from our current pandemic and so forth, how we invest in our transport networks, that's going to influence how the cities we're talking about today can grow and prosper in the years ahead. So, okay, thank you very much, Tony.